So picture this. It is 2:00 a.m.
Oh, the classic hour for overthinking.
Right. You're staring at the ceiling. You're completely exhausted, but your brain is just aggressively replaying this deeply irritating conversation you had like 3 days ago.
Or you're stuck in traffic, and instead of listening to the radio, you're mentally arguing with a coworker who isn't even in the car with you.
Exactly. We have all been there. It's miserable. But Eleanor Roosevelt actually had this fascinating theory about this exact moment. She had this really famous epigram: great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people.
Yeah, that quote gets thrown around a lot. Usually
Right.
it's just, a polite way to tell someone to stop gossiping at a dinner party.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you actually pull it apart, Roosevelt is pointing to something much more profound about our psychology.
That is the thing.
Yeah.
Because the word discuss here, it isn't about what you say out loud to other people.
Right.
It's about your internal monologue. It's about what your mind naturally reaches for in those quiet, unstructured hours when it has absolutely nothing else to do.
Like when you're just standing in line at the grocery store.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because what your brain defaults to in those moments is a shockingly reliable metric of who you actually are. So today, for this deep dive, we are exploring a blueprint for how to change that default state.
How to build an untouchable inner life, basically.
Yes, exactly. What the ancients called the inner citadel.
And to really understand that blueprint, we have to travel back to ancient Rome. The inner citadel was the Emperor Marcus Aurelius's term for the core part of your consciousness that it absolutely cannot be touched by outside circumstances.
Of your governing faculty, right?
Right. But ironically, to understand the emperor's concept best, we actually have to look at Epictetus, because Epictetus, he didn't start out in a palace. He began his life as a slave.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he understood in a brutally literal way what it meant to have your physical freedom, your body, your circumstances completely controlled by someone else.
He knew what it was like to literally have everything stripped away from him.
He did. And because of that, he built his entire philosophy on this one stark, unforgiving distinction. You have to separate the things that are in your power from the things that are entirely not in your power.
Okay, so things in our power would be like our opinions, our choices, our judgments.
Right. What we decide to pursue or avoid.
And then literally everything else, your reputation, your bank account, your health, and, crucially, the behavior of other people. All of that is outside your power.
Exactly. So when you map that back onto Eleanor Roosevelt's hierarchy, the people who are busy discussing ideas internally, they are living entirely within their own power.
They're fortifying that inner citadel.
Right. But the people obsessing over events or laying awake at 2:00 a.m. furious about what someone else did, they have basically just handed the keys to their inner life directly over to the outside world.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And the Roman philosopher Seneca had this brilliant and honestly kind of gross way of framing this.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about. He was incredibly blunt.
Very blunt. He basically said that people who fixate on the behavior of others are like people pointing out the pimples on someone else's face while they themselves are completely covered in open sores.
It is such a grotesque image.
It's so gross. But man, does it make the point. Like when you are doom scrolling through social media, getting enraged at total strangers, or, obsessing over office politics, you are ignoring your own internal sores.
You're distracting yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You have to take ownership of your own attention.
It's a really powerful realization, and frankly, it's a relatively easy concept to agree with when you're just sitting in a comfortable room with a cup of coffee.
Oh, sure. In theory, it's great.
We all want to own our attention, but the true test of this philosophy isn't how you feel on a quiet Sunday morning. The test is what happens when reality unexpectedly crashes through the gates of your carefully planned life.
Which is exactly where the villain enters the story. Because it is incredibly easy to feel like a stoic master when nothing is actually going wrong.
Right, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Exactly. But our exploration today isn't just about the theory of the inner life. It's about the messy, chaotic reality of adversity. There's this brilliant observation from the author Stephen Pressfield. He writes a lot about the creative process, and he uses the movie The Godfather to explain how this works.
Whoa, this is a great analogy.
Yeah, so he points out that in the second act of any story, the villain completely dominates.
The villain holds all the cards, dictates the pace, forces the hero onto the defensive.
They hold all the cards. Like, think about it. Sollozzo kills Luca Brasi. He attempts to assassinate Don Corleone right in the street. He threatens the family at every single turn.
And the Corleones don't get to choose the timing of these attacks.
No. They don't pick the train at all. The only thing they get to do is react, and then react again, and react again.
And see, Pressfield isn't just giving us a masterclass on screenwriting here. He is accurately describing the architecture of human life. Because the villain in your life, whether that is a sudden medical diagnosis, a massive financial loss, being laid off, or just encountering sheer injustice, that villain never checks your Google Calendar.
It definitely does not care if you're busy.
No, it doesn't wait until you've saved up enough money or gotten enough sleep. It simply arrives right in the middle of your meticulously made plans, completely disrupts the sequence you imagine, and forces you to improvise.
So true.
So the defining question of your life isn't whether the villain is going to show up. The question is simply what you are going to do while you are reacting.
Okay, so this is where I really need to push back on one of the modern interpretations of this idea, because Neil Ravikant talks about handling these massive life disruptions, and his ultimate one-word answer is just accept.
Yes, acceptance.
And I have to be honest, reading that acceptance sounds a bit like a spiritual shrug. It sounds defeatist.
Like you're just giving up.
Yeah. Like the villain burns down your business and you just go, oh, well, I accept the universe. Are we just giving up? Isn't that the literal definition of passivity?
It is the most common misunderstanding of Stoicism in the modern world. People hear accept and they think resignation.
Right.
But Stoic acceptance is absolutely not passivity. It is actually the fundamental, non-negotiable precondition for taking action. Think of the FEAR acronym: FACE. Explore, accept, respond.
Face, explore, accept, respond.
Okay, let's break that down.
So first, you face the problem. You acknowledge the villain is actually in the room.
Yeah.
Then you explore its dimensions.
Like assessing the damage.
Exactly. You look closely at the damage. You look at the bank account. You read the medical chart. Then and only then do you accept that it is real and happening right now. Notice that accept is step 3 of 4.
Oh, I see.
It is the doorway. It is not the destination.
So the respond part is the actual destination.
Precisely. You simply cannot navigate a crisis if you are busy arguing with reality about the fact that the crisis is happening in the first place. That makes a lot of sense.
The psychological friction we feel isn't usually from the event itself. It's from the gap between what is happening and our internal narrative that it shouldn't be happening. If you are stuck wishing the villain hadn't shown up, you are basically trapped in step 2.
So acceptance just clears the board so you can actually make your next move.
Yeah.
That clicks for me. It's like you cannot possibly put out the fire if you were standing in the living room screaming that fires are unfair and shouldn't exist.
Right.
You have to accept the house is currently burning in order to have the presence of mind to grab the fire extinguisher.
And James Meredith proved exactly how powerful this mechanism is, and he did it not in theory, but in extreme life-threatening chaos.
Yes, this is the ultimate stress test of the inner citadel. Because to see what this kind of profound acceptance looks like under literal fire, you just have to look at James Meredith in 1961.
It's an unbelievable story.
It really is. So for context, Meredith was attempting to enroll at the University of Mississippi, and he faced years of obstruction. He faced the full weight of institutional hatred directed entirely at him, a single person whose only goal was the right to sit in a university classroom.
And the resistance he met was staggering.
When he finally arrived on campus, it was literally torn apart by rioters. They were throwing firebongs. The National Guard had to be called in just to try to stop the violence.
It was a literal war zone.
And amid all of this unbelievable chaos, on the night the violence actually peaked, James Meredith was in his dorm room, fast asleep.
He was sleeping peacefully while a violent mob raged right outside his building.
It's almost incomprehensible. Like when people later pressed him about this extraordinary calm, asking how he could possibly sleep through a riot that was actively trying to kill him, he revealed his secret.
And this is where it gets absolutely fascinating.
His secret was that he had already imagined himself dead.
Yeah. And to a modern ear, that sounds incredibly morbid. It sounds like clinical depression, honestly.
Right, like he had just given up.
Exactly. But this was actually a pure, highly advanced Stoic technique called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Meredith hadn't given up on life at all. He had voluntarily surrendered everything in his mind in advance.
Wow.
He had walked through that FEAR acronym all the way to the end. He accepted the absolute worst-case possibility, his own death, so completely that the mob outside had absolutely nothing left to threaten him with.
I picture it like diffusing a bomb by willingly reaching in and removing the explosive material yourself.
Yes, that is a perfect way to put it.
If the bomb is the fear of death or the fear of the crowd, he just reached in and took the fear out. The mob was screaming threats, but they were threatening to take something he had already mentally let go of.
Because he had accepted the worst completely lost its power over him. He neutralized the villain's leverage, and that is why he could keep going.
Yeah.
He returned again and again, even after surviving a shotgun blast on the side of a highway years later.
Connecting this back to Eleanor Roosevelt's quote, Meredith wasn't a small mind discussing Meredith. He wasn't sitting in his dorm room calibrating his courage based on the crowd's opinion of him.
Not at all.
He was a great mind and acting an idea. In his case, the idea of justice. It perfectly embodies what Marcus Aurelius wrote. People can stab you with knives, they can shower you with curses, but no one can actually stop you from acting with courage and enacting justice.
Right.
And it is one thing to read that line in a leather-bound book. It is another thing entirely to live it. His interior completeness made the external chaos practically irrelevant.
But this raises a crucial practical challenge for you, the listener.
Right, because most of us aren't facing that.
Exactly. You are probably not going to face a violent firebomb-throwing mob this week.
Hopefully not.
But you are going to face the daily, exhausting, relentless pressure of other people's opinions. You're going to face the fear of a career pivot or the anxiety of a public failure. The psychological mechanism Meredith used is the exact same one we need for our modern problems. So how do we build that level of interior completeness in our everyday, ordinary lives?
There is a really beautiful starting point for this. And it goes back to Seneca again. He was borrowing a line from another philosopher, Hecato, who wrote, I have begun to be a friend to myself.
I love that line.
It's so good. And when you stop and actually audit what a true friend is, it completely changes how you talk to yourself. Think about it. A true friend isn't desperate for your constant approval.
No, they're not.
A true friend isn't cruel to you just to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
And a true friend makes solitude enjoyable because they're genuinely good company.
It's such a humble metric, but the implications are massive. If your sense of self doesn't depend on the accuracy of other people's perceptions, you can endure being misunderstood.
Yeah.
You don't abandon yourself the second the crowd turns against you or your boss gives you a bad review, but we do need a reality check here.
Oh, for sure.
Epictetus warned his students that the perfect Stoic sage, the mythical person who always responds correctly, who never gets angry in traffic, who is perfectly immune to outside opinions, that is just an ideal.
Right. It's not a destination you just arrive at and unpack your bags. We are just supposed to aim for it. Reminds me of that old St. Jerome maxim, good, better, best, never let it rest till your good is better and your better is better.
Exactly. We are all works in progress.
But there's some fascinating modern examples of people who seem to have cultivated this mindset in a very specific way, particularly when it comes to clarity over consumption.
Because the modern arena where we lose our minds to the crowd's opinion most often is consumerism.
Oh, absolutely. It is so hard to maintain your inner citadel when targeted Instagram ads are practically reading your mind, telling you that you need a new car or a new wardrobe to be respected.
It's relentless.
But look at Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in human history. He is still living in the exact same house in Omaha that he bought in 1958 for $31,500.
That is wild.
Or look at NBA superstar Kawhi Leonard. He signed a $94 million contract, and he kept driving the 1997 Chevy Tahoe he'd had since he was a teenager.
A 97 Tahoe.
Right. And going way back to ancient Rome, there was Cato, a noble from one of those powerful families who purposefully walked the streets barefoot.
What is critical to understand here is that none of these examples are about poverty or punishing yourself. Cato wasn't barefoot because he couldn't afford sandals.
No.
Kawhi Leonard could buy a fleet of Ferraris tomorrow without even looking at his bank account.
So why do they do it? It's not about deprivation, right? It's entirely about clarity. Cato the Elder has this incredible quote, "Nothing is cheap if it is superfluous."
I love that word, superfluous.
It's perfect. And superfluous just means unnecessary to the life you actually love. The danger is, if you haven't taken the quiet time to decide what you genuinely value, then everything looks necessary. You think you need the massive house, the luxury SUV, the designer shoes, just to confirm your status to the crowd. But Buffett, Leonard, Cato, their attention is organized around their own interior lives. They don't need external confirmation because they are already deeply nourished by what they have.
Because they have made friends with themselves.
Exactly.
And because of that, they can actually enjoy what is present without constantly grasping for what is absent. The crowd's confirmation simply isn't their metric for success. They have audited their desires and realized that most of what society tells us we need is just noise.
Okay, so we've mapped out how to build and defend this inner citadel. We know we need to face the villain, accept reality to clear the board, detach from the crowd's opinion, and be a good friend to ourselves.
Right.
But a fortress needs supplies. What actually powers this internal life over the course of 50, 60, 80 years? Because it sounds utterly exhausting to just use sheer willpower to constantly be on guard.
Oh, if we were relying on willpower alone, it would be impossible. Willpower fatigues.
Yeah, it runs out so fast.
And this is where Marcus Aurelius provides one final profound image for how this works. He doesn't describe the inner citadel as some closed-off, sterile bunker.
Okay.
He describes a fountain of goodness inside each person. And the distinction between a fountain and a reservoir is the key to everything we've talked about today.
Oh, wow. Okay, so a reservoir only holds what you pour into it. Every time you draw water from a reservoir, it diminishes. Eventually, if it doesn't rain, it just runs dry.
Exactly. But a fountain is entirely different. A fountain is fed from below. It constantly replenishes itself. It pushes upward. It keeps giving day after day as long as the deep source remains open.
But a fountain needs an aquifer, right? It needs a water table to draw from. So if willpower isn't powering this inner citadel, what is? What keeps the fountain bubbling?
It is the daily practice.
The daily practice.
Yeah, it's the unglamorous, everyday interior work. It is making the conscious choice to think about ideas rather than gossiping about people.
Like Eleanor Roosevelt said.
Right, it's practicing that friction of acceptance when your flight is delayed or your project fails. It's facing your fears and practicing that discipline of frugality not to look humble, but to maintain your own clarity. Epictetus demanded this incremental forming and reforming of the self from his students every single day.
But there is a massive, surprising twist to all of this. Because up until this exact moment, everything we've talked about has been very high-minded philosophy.
Yes.
It's been very cerebral, right? Mind over matter, internal choices, stoic rationality. But the inner citadel is directly tied to the physical body. You cannot separate the two.
They are completely linked.
There's this incredible formula from the pioneering family therapist Virginia Satir about human touch. She famously said that human beings need 4 hugs a day just for survival.
Just to survive.
Right. And we need 8 hugs a day for maintenance. And we need 12 hugs a day for growth.
It is the perfect counterweight to all the ancient philosophy because it prevents the Stoic mindset from becoming cold, isolated, or robotic. The physical body is the foundation of the inner citadel. You cannot outthink a chronic lack of sleep.
No, you really can't.
You cannot stoically philosophize your way out of the fundamental mammalian need for warmth and connection. The fountain that Marcus Aurelius describes isn't just fed by reading Epictetus and doing journaling exercises.
Right.
It is fed by rest. It is fed by physical touch. It is fed by the quiet, daily accumulation of simple human kindness.
4 hugs just for survival.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's safe to say most of us are walking around at a pretty severe deficit. We could all use a few more of those to keep the fountain flowing.
Absolutely. So when you bring all of these threads together, Eleanor Roosevelt's hierarchy, that great minds discuss ideas, isn't meant to be some harsh elitist verdict on how you've lived your life so far. It is an invitation. Ideas aren't just abstract theories reserved for academics in ivory towers. When James Meredith slept peacefully through a violent riot, he was actively enacting an idea. When Warren Buffett lives in his modest house in Omaha, he is actively living an idea. The core truth, approached from all these different angles, from Roman emperors to NBA players, is always the same.
Which is?
The quality of your life is not determined by what happens to you. It is determined purely by the interior with which you meet it.
It is entirely about what you build inside. Which brings me to a final question for you, the listener, to mull over today as you get back to your routine. If what your mind naturally reaches for in its quietest hours is the truest measure of who you are.
The real you.
Yeah. If we were to hit rewind and replay all the idle thoughts you've had over the last week while you were driving or waiting in line or trying to fall asleep, what idea would we say you are currently enacting?